Welcome. My name is Sheila McKinnon, and I'm the lead minister here at First Metropolitan. And if you're visiting with us here in person or virtually, we welcome you. We are a very different group of people. Each Sunday, different congregation, both externally and internally. Who we are changes constantly. We are still in this very pivot-filled time of COVID. People are invited, they are welcome to, but not required to take off their mask if they would care to do so once they're seated this Sunday. And in a couple of weeks, we'll have a bit of a choir back. Kelly's going to have the first choir practice the Thursday after, yes, I hear some clapping. The first Thursday after Labor Day. So we will be happy to welcome them back too. And wherever you are, we welcome you this morning.
We acknowledge and respect the Lekwungen peoples on whose traditional territory our land stands on, and the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wasanich people whose historical relations with this land continue to this day. I was born in what settlers call Guelph, Ontario, on the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation territory. During the late 18th century, many Loyalists arrived in Guelph once the American War of Independence came to conclusion, and they were no longer wanted on that land. The Crown made a treaty with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation called the Between the Land Purchase, or Treaty 3. This land was to be shared between both the settlers and the indigenous peoples. The treaty was signed in 1792 between the principal chiefs of the Mississauga Nation and John Gray Simcoe, a representative of the province and the Crown. Since then, most of the land has become colonial land. The closest reserve is not even in Guelph. It's a 50-minute drive away in Brantford. I was never taught in school about land acknowledgements or what territory I had grown up on. I encourage you to do some research about the lands that you have grown up on, as we are not able to acknowledge and respect our Indigenous brothers and sisters if we do not know about them. As we search to learn and live the teachings of Christ, let us be people of truth and reconciliation.
That was recorded on the beautiful campus at UVic, and some of you went to school there, I'm sure, and we had a lovely time there the other morning, Jody and I. So you can see that the service in person continues. Once the choir comes, they will be wearing masks in the choir stalls. But we're allowed to sing with, I guess, with our masks this morning.
I think you're allowed to cut the mask off.
Yeah. All right. Our orange t-shirts, and you're going to see when Jody comes to the front what they look like on her. Robin had one the other day. On the 5th and 12th of September, they'll be available here after church. They're a beautiful pattern, and when Jody was speaking on the campus, we saw this pattern and the feather as the two banners all throughout the campus. It was just beautiful. Our denomination has responded to our brothers and sisters in Haiti, suffering yet again with another devastating earthquake. And so both with our partners on the ground there and by just financing the work of those partners, we've been able to respond immediately. So the new regulations, easy for me to say, right, about COVID, the bottom line for us is we are allowed to worship. That's a fabulous thing. We will not be required to see if people are vaccinated or not. That is not a requirement of worship. This exemption is only for worship. For example, at choir practice, it is necessary. So we're going to find our way through that because we are adaptable people. We will also not be having coffee after church, and we will continue the next time we have communion to use those little cups because we did quite well last week with the prepackaged communions. We'll find out more as the days and weeks go on. This is the call number 90, the TRC call to action. It's again about sports policies to grant inclusive and stable funding for Aboriginal people for all levels of sport and involvement in sports. And that beautiful picture is of Spencer O'Brien, whose grandmother is First Nation from the Waka. I could say that earlier, sorry, First Nation, and I apologize for scrambling that. So we call upon them to ensure that First Nations are encouraged and funded at every level of athletic development.
For the beauty of the earth, for the glory of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies. God of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
When we spend time together and when we spend time with God, we are following the ancient ways of a man who lived more than 2,000 years ago. A man who led a group of his friends on a spiritual journey of selflessness and compassion and justice and love. A man who gave his life to remind us that there was no getting it wrong. A man who invited everyone, no buts about it, to his table. A man who said such wonderful things and did such amazing things that all of these people began to follow him. A man who, when they asked him who you are, responded, I am the light. We light the candles of the four directions as a sign of God's Spirit at work in the world. May their light brighten our spirits. May the light of God shine through us and brighten the world. On Ash Wednesday, we started a new tradition here at First Met by lighting our candle of hope. We have our own unique hopes and also those of our community. The light reminds us of God's constant love and light in our lives, and that if we find ourselves in darkness, all we must do is ask for his help, and he will light our path.
The invitation to worship is a conversation. Spirit calls, human ones, beloved community, be alert, hear the message. Spirit enters this moment into our heart.
share. We seek your guidance through friendship and care. Loving God, we are praying.
Gracious, ever-calling God, open our eyes to your presence and your voice, that we might once again transformed into servants of your light. Send your Spirit into our worship time. Inspire, transform, and heal us, so that we may be who you need us to be. In the blessed name of the living Christ. Amen. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron, and he said, "Look, we are your bone and flesh. For some time, while Saul was king over us, it was you who led out the Israels and brought it in. The Lord said to you, 'It is you who shall be shepherd of my people Israel, you who shall be ruler over Israel.' So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 40 years. At Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and at Jerusalem, he reigned over all of Israel and Judah 33 years. David occupied the stronghold and named it the City of David. David built the city all around, from the Milo inward, and David became greater and greater, for the Lord, the God of hosts, was with him." This is part of our story. Thanks be to God.
I will always bless the Lord, praise His name and love His word. Humble folk will fill with joy as in God I glory. When I prayed, God answered me. From my fears He set me free. One who trusts God's faithful love shall be disappointed. Those who cry are listened to. Those in need receive their due. Angels guard God's loyal flock, keeping them from danger. Taste and see that God is good. Know your yearnings understood. Find your true security. Be God's holy people. Alleluia. Alleluia.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Campus United, the campus ministry for the Pacific Mountain Regional Council of the United Church of Canada. My name is Daniel Martin, and I'm the campus ministry animator for PMRC. Campus ministry in our region has a long and storied legacy, dating back to the 1920s. Since then, students from across Canada and all over the world have been connected at the University of Victoria and the University of British Columbia with campus ministers as well as other kind, caring adults and faith communities. After a year-long review, the Pacific Mountain Regional Council is carrying this legacy forward and recommitting to journeying alongside students in the ways of Jesus while away at school and throughout young adulthood. There are over 60 post-secondary schools across our region, and it's likely that there is a college, university, or trade school near your congregation, a place full of students who may be new to the area or to the country, and who are certainly experiencing culture shock as they transition not only to a new place, but back to in-person learning. A place that is full of students who are longing for brave, empathetic, and affirming spaces and struggle to find them amidst the busyness and insanity of university life. Students who are lonely, hungry, and exhausted, longing for the intergenerational community that we are all hardwired for in our souls. And students who like the idea of Jesus, but don't know where to start their exploration. And so we're proud to announce that we're expanding campus ministry all throughout the region to meet students where they're at. And while every campus may not have a chaplain or minister, there's plenty of room to grow in and dream in out-of-the-box ways to connect with students on their faith journeys, whether at Thompson Rivers University, Selkirk College, BCIT, or wherever they're at. But this means we need to hear from you. Where are your congregations connecting with young adults right now? Where are your young people headed off to university, college, or trade school? Do you have stories or encounters with how campus ministry has shaped you that maybe you'd like to share? Head on over to campusunited.ca and find us on Facebook and Instagram under the same name to learn more. And if you're a student, tell us where you're headed to school and what you're thinking about faith. If you're a church leader or minister, pass on our information to your students so we can get connected. Don't worry, we'll be reaching out one-on-one soon as well. Well, thanks for the listen, and may the peace and wonder and joy of Christ be with you all.
Jody's invited me here to this beautiful part of the UVic campus right near the Multi-Faith Chapel to talk about what's been going on with her and us for the last 6 months?
4 months.
4 months. And so I'm going to ask Jody first to introduce herself and a bit of background how she ended up working with us here at First Met.
So my name's Jody, but I usually go by Jo. I am going into my 4th year of writing in French at UVic. Yeah, so I'm part of the co-op program, so I decided to, obviously was looking for co-ops, and I grew up in the church, and so when I saw a co-op at a church, I thought, wow, like this would be great for me. It's what I'm interested in. There are opportunities to do video production and communications and just stuff that I love. So I thought I might as well apply and see what happens.
And how has it been like to work at First Met during a pandemic?
It has been wonderful. I'm sure it's a little different than it would be working during a normal year. But I've been really enjoying it. I still get to go into the office 2-3 days a week, talk to Fiona and Katya and Bruce. I've been able to work on the newsletter and help with the Sunday services. And I think even though it is during a pandemic, I think it's not that different. I think if anything, I got more opportunities to work doing like the Truth and Reconciliation and our Minutes for Right Relations, and being able to have a flexible schedule of doing things online and in person. So it's definitely different, but it was nice working in a place and kind of seeing the behind the scenes of how we are able to provide services and information even during a pandemic.
Mm-hmm. So did you work primarily then with Joan and David and the communications team?
I did, yes. I got to work with Joan and David. We had bi-weekly meetings with them, and they were my main supports, and both wonderful people, and I really got to know them as well.
What made you choose to come to University of Victoria? You've got a great school right there in Beguiled.
The UVic has a really incredible writing program.
What does that encompass? A writing
Yeah.
program?
So the writing program here encompasses 5 genres, and you pick 2. So the 5 genres are poetry, fiction, screenwriting, playwriting, and creative nonfiction. And I ended up in my second year picking to pursue creative nonfiction and screenwriting. There weren't really any creative writing programs in Ontario that really drew me towards it, but here at UVic, there were so many opportunities to work with real-life writers and opportunities to get published with campus resources like the Side of West, UVic's literary journal, as well as the Malahat Review. And so just the ability to be able to write and also meet with other writers has been super wonderful. And I think learning about creative nonfiction has really helped me be able to do things like interview people and get to know people and share other stories. That's where my real passion lies, is the stories of real people living extraordinary lives.
And it's sometimes said as Christians, we are people of the story.
Exactly.
Well, Guelph's loss is our gain.
Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. I was just wondering about, I think that a co-op is a little different than an internship, but in some ways parallel.
Yeah.
When I look back at my own internships, I think about the things that were immediately gratifying and wonderful to do, even if they were challenging and difficult, and some that were just challenging. And I didn't necessarily, it wasn't every day a great day of discovery. Some days there were things that seemed trudging, and I thought probably during the pandemic we had some of those days too. How was it for you that way? What were the highs and lows?
I think definitely the highs was anything helping out with the service. I really enjoyed doing that. I got to make the PowerPoints, so adding the pictures and the words and just kind of helping out with the worship planning meetings where we plan the services, and also getting to create the videos like the one that we did with Julie and Daly. That was super fun, being able to go into the community and create a video for the congregation.
So that creative element was very important. And was that a surprise that we ended up doing that kind of thing, or is that what you'd hoped?
I think it was a hope and a surprise, because I knew there were going to be some video elements, but I got to do so much video editing, which I absolutely love doing, like helping out with the Minute for Right Relations video every week, and being able to clip out different parts is just, I enjoyed every minute of it, for sure.
I'm not sure that everybody would know, Jody, that the final video presented at the retirement of our last chaplain year was one that you had. Your fingerprints were all over that. Yeah. And so for people who may have seen that work before, that was an introduction for us on your CV.
Yeah, and it was really nice to get to do that for Henry. I've known Henry for quite a few years, and to be able to get asked to make that video for his retirement was great. And it kind of also led me to this job, which was also awesome.
Yeah, right. So what about the other side? Things that were, I would think because of the pandemic, there were so many restrictions. I felt them, but...
For sure. I think probably some of the lows were just, again, with the pandemic, sometimes information changes very last minute. And so just making sure that I was on top of emails and making sure I was on top of what the restrictions were. And when things change last minute, it could sometimes be frustrating, but it usually worked out in the end. So, yeah.
How do you say pivot?
Yes, exactly. So it was tough, but yes, it was able to get done, and I learned how to do time management and make sure I kept on top of things. So yeah, it all worked out in the end. But I think the vast majority were highlights.
So, thank you for that introduction to how you ended up with us. And I wondered if you mentioned about coming from a faith background, if you could tell us a little bit about that, and how has that been impacted during your time as a co-op student during the pandemic at First Metropolitan United Church?
Yeah, so I grew up, my dad was Presbyterian and my mom was Catholic. but I grew up mostly in the Catholic Church, went to a Catholic school, very kind of insular in a sense, but all of my friends were Christian, all of my teachers were, so I definitely grew up with a Christian bubble, which I really enjoyed. Once I got to university, I joined a few Catholic groups, realized they weren't really for me. They were more on the conservative side, not necessarily very queer-friendly. And as a queer person, I decided to leave the Catholic Church just because it wasn't fitting right for me and my more progressive views. And then my friend Christopher invited me to the service at Multi-Faith on campus called Wine Before Supper. And I fell in love with it. Myself and a few other members of Multi-Faith, who are also UVic students, decided to create the Inclusive Christians Club, which is a club on campus for more progressive Christians that's inclusive of all genders, sexualities, races, abilities, etc. And so I'm currently one of the student leaders for that group, and that has been wonderful. And just being able to find a place that accepts me and has the same views as me. So then being able to go to First Met and find a actual church with the same views has been really nice because the past couple of years I've been kind of church hopping and haven't really found a place that sat right. And so coming to First Met, it definitely felt like this is a place that's like doing great things in the world and is showing like a radical justice and love for people, which is one of the things about Christianity that's so important to me. And yeah, over my time working with Sheila at First Met, I'm currently thinking about going into the discernment of ordained ministry at the United Church. And so kind of just starting the process, thinking about how I'm going to do that. I want to live a life for Jesus in a way that I can do social justice and help other people in a way that's progressive and aligns with my faith. And I think this is definitely the way to do it. So I'm kind of exploring those opportunities, and I definitely I don't think I would have thought about it if I didn't do my co-op at First Met. So I'm very thankful for it.
That is very encouraging to hear, and we know that means that you will stay in touch with us.
Of course.
Jody has said she'll come back. I appreciate your answer very much, and I love it when people are thinking about how to incorporate their faith and their calling so that their vocation becomes their occupation. So, no life like it. Jody, young adults fill this campus from all over Canada and in fact the world on good days. Different philosophies of life, different backgrounds. We know that this is often a time when the first experiences of tragedy come into people's lives. So, large question, why is faith so important at this particular stage of your life?
I think once you are entering university, you're kind of making your own decisions. I know growing up, a lot of kids will go to church just because their parents go to church and will believe just because their parents believe. And I think it's super important for people in our age to continue with activities that encourage faith formation.
So that's really important, is that you're owning a choice rather than just inheriting something.
Totally. And it's also super important to find other people who own that choice as well, and who live a life of radical compassion and justice, and who make that choice to be in Christian groups. I think that's super important because I do know so many people who, once they get into university, they kind of stop attending church and their faith is a very passive part of their life. And I think, at least for me, having faith as an active part of my life helps me through all of the hard times because I know that there's someone out there watching over me and who cares about me, especially in this age where depression and anxiety are so prevalent. For me, my faith has been a huge, huge help in that. And so I think it's so important that young people continue with their faith, especially in university. And UVic is such a secular campus. There aren't very many Christian groups, so I would highly encourage anyone who is about to attend UVic to check out Inclusive Christians. and other Christian groups on campus to continue developing their faith formation. There are several chaplains on campus. So there is a Presbyterian chaplain, Laura, an Anglican chaplain, her name's Ruth, a Lutheran one. We have the United Church chaplain, his name's Greg. He just started here and he is wonderful. I really have enjoyed talking to him so far. These are great people to go and just ask questions. I know if you email them, I know especially Ruth and Greg are always open to going out for a walk and just getting to talk to people. Like, that's what they do. They want to talk to young people about faith, and they're incredible resources to have.
Such a beautiful thing we have now on the campuses. We have open chaplains, open to questions, to honest, heartfelt discussion without trying to steer anybody using any of the old techniques. And that's a wonderful breath of fresh air, as is your time with us, Jody.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for sharing this with us this morning. I hope that for those of you who didn't go to UVic, as I didn't go, you'll get a chance to come by. We've been wandering around this beautiful campus and looking at some of the totem poles and the waterfalls and the gardens. It's an extraordinary place, right close to home, and is in itself a spiritual resource to be here, isn't it? So, as we conclude this reflection with Jody, I would say that she will not be forever gone from our midst.
Yeah.
And so, we thank you very much
Thank you so
for your
much,
time and for sharing with us this morning.
Thank you.
I have called you by your name, you are mine. I have gifted you and asked you now to shine. I will not abandon you, all my promises are true. You are gifted, called and chosen, you are mine. I will help you learn my name as you go. Read it written in my people, help them grow. Know the water in my name, seek the word your soul can claim. Offer Jesus body, give him all the gold. I know you will need my touch as you go. Feel it pulsing in creation's ebb and flow. Like a woman reaching out, choosing faith in spite of doubt. Hold the hem of Jesus' robe and let it go. I have given you a name, it is mine. I have given you my spirit as a sign. With the wonder in your soul, make my wounded children grow. Go and tell my precious people they are mine.
We now have the music coming in from the vinyl store next door, lest you wonder what's happening in our own very own yard. We give thanks for the great generosity of the congregation and supporters of this ministry. We have financial gifts given to this church through pre-authorized gifts, checks mailed, things dropped off in our mailbox or our office, and of course through Canada Helps Online. But we also have donations that are of time, of energy, of creativity, of work, and they are also used to further God's mission. Through the work of this congregation and the the groups we support in the community and beyond, mission is achieved. And so when we bring our offerings in whatever way, be they prayer for the people of Afghanistan, financial gifts for the people of Haiti, or knitting for the people of North Park, we believe that God's mission is done, and we present all our gifts to God in thanksgiving, from whom all blessings flow.
Bless these offerings, O generous God, so that what we give and what we do will bring healing, hope, and reconciliation for all of your creation. O Holy One, faith is an awesome gift, not just that we believe in you, but that you believe in us. You have set within us the awesome power of creativity, entrusting us to shape a holy future. Within us is the renovating vision of Jesus, able to enlarge the room we call reality, replacing walls with floor-to-ceiling windows, installing skylights to see the view above our heads. Respectfully, we remove the ancient symbols from our sacred tables to spread out the kingdom's blueprints, knowing that Jesus is present. With a sharpened pencil and an architect's eye for symmetry of the sacred, with plans in place, we take up the hammer of the spirit of Noah, carpenter of a divine restoration, and on behalf of all creation, we build on your belief in us. Eternal Spirit, earth maker, pain bearer, life giver, source of all that is and all that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God in whom is heaven. The hallowing of your name echoes through the universe. The way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your beloved community of peace and freedom, sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurt we absorb from one another, forgive us. In the times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From trials too great to endure, spare us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For your reign and the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen.
Oh, make a difference. We can make a difference. Oh, make a difference in the world. Oh, make a difference. We can make a difference. Oh, make a difference in the world. We are the salt of the earth, want to let the people see the love of God for you and me. We are the light of the world, want to be hidden but we see. Oh, make a difference in the world. Oh, make a difference. We can make a difference. Oh, make a difference in the world. Oh, make a difference. We can make a difference. Oh, make a difference in the world. We are the hands of Christ, reaching out to those in need. The face of God for all to see. We are the Spirit of hope. We are the voice of peace. Oh, make a difference in the world. Oh, make a difference. We can make a difference. Oh, make a difference in the world. Oh, make a difference. We can make a difference. Oh, make a difference in the world. So let your love shine on. Let it shine for all to see. Oh, make a difference in the world. And the Spirit of Christ will be with us as we
Please be seated. Just a couple of thank yous, as always, to Annalise for beautiful leading of music and also your solos. And to Jody for sharing with us her faith story and being with us out at UVic. And we know that what a wonderful thing ahead of us. As the church, we see the next generations coming up. We have pictures in our wallet of beloved children, if they're related to us or not. And we also have memorials with us because we are people who live in many generations. And in Christ, there is no loss. And so we have memorial tattoos or jewelry. I got my dad's watch on today as a reminder that those who worship in a distant shore worship with us as well. I did want to just tell you about the Afghan refugee crisis that the United Church nationally, Kate Rudd said that congregations were phoning her, volunteering, that without anything being done, I believe 60 or 70 congregations have already started put together packages. We are not one of those congregations, but we will be able to support somebody who has that energy in a refugee committee. And so I will let you know as soon as we know anything further from Pacific Mountain region. But we do pray for all those people making that trip across to Canada and to all those congregations preparing even this morning to receive refugees from Afghanistan. Our commissioning is the one we've been using from the Beguiled by Beauty series.
God of all to thee we raise. This our hymn of grateful praise.
And so now we leave this place of worship, and while so much of the road ahead is uncertain, the path constantly changing, we know some things that are as solid and sure as the ground beneath our feet and the sky above our heads. We know that God is love. We know Christ's light endures. We know the Holy Spirit is here with us, in the space between us, in the space with all things, closer to us than our next breath, binding us to each other. And so until we meet again, go in peace. Amen.